I mean, I was born in January 1929, and I was apparently a 7-month baby, premature. And of course, I don't remember any details. So I know Mother was unfortunately sick from then on, pretty well until she died 12 years later. So, and at the time, I think we were all born in Steinhausen, in our house, and we had a midwife that came. So that's really all I can say, that what I was told. So I don't know how much I remember until I was 5. I know I was they probably felt I was maybe a bit on the weak side because I was a premature baby, and maybe they tried to keep me away from rough playing, or I don't know. It's just an afterthought.
Yeah. Okay. And so your date of birth, I'm not sure you gave us that. Your date of birth?
January 17, 1929.
In Steinhausen?
Yeah.
Okay. And that's where your grandfather, or your father, I should say, had a home. Can you talk a little bit about the house and what was there?
Well, I don't know how long my grandfather used to live there, but I know he used to live in another place there in Steinhausen. And I'm not sure if he built anything. I think the house beside us, that was moved from another place that I think grandfather did that. But I don't know how many changes we made. I know probably when maybe my dad took over the business from, well, grandfather, he was a carpenter, cabinet maker, and but he always tried other things. Of course, trades weren't as individual as they are today, of course. I mean, somebody like my grandfather, he got into electrical, low voltage wiring. He also got into plumbing. He built his own water line and his own hydro, like power plant. So, and he drove his machinery with water power for I don't know how long, which was certainly something new at the time. And well, of course, electricity wasn't very old then yet, but so I don't know. Eventually it changed to electricity, I guess. And what else? I mean, grandfather and grandmother, they lived with us in the same house. It was a big house.
You were just. I was just saying that Hans would have, when your new mother arrived, Hans would have already been away from home, or not?
Well, like during the week, we always had to come home on the weekend.
But where was he during the week?
In Baden.
In Baden.
At
Brandenburg, doing his apprenticeship. And then Alois, where was he at the time?
I think he was just ready to go start his apprenticeship there too. So I'm not sure if there was a short delay, but anyway, he entered there at the same time, just a year later, I guess, than Hans.
Okay, and then tell us more about your time in St. Maurice. You had finished 1 year of high school?
Yeah.
And then was it usual? So that St. Maurice was a continuation of high school, but it was French?
Well, I would have been better off if I could have gone to high school in Zug, for the 3 years. I would have learned more French than that was a lousy school for learning French. Huh? It was religious, I guess, but see what happened. Hans and Alois went to Neuchâtel. They had too much freedom there. So they wanted to make a change. They didn't want me to go there. But they had a good time there. They had, they had, like we never had free outings. We had probably a 10-foot high stone wall around that whole college there. Huh?
Yeah.
And the only time we got out is on, I don't know, sure, during the week, maybe once, and then on Sunday. But we had to walk all together with some brother priest or whatever. Oh no, we had no freedom at all.
And it was all boys, of course?
Yeah.
And you wouldn't get home on weekends, though, would you?
No.
From there?
No, not from Neuchâtel either. That was for maybe quarter a year, and then you had your summer holidays or Christmas holidays or whatever.
And you finished high school then in St. Maurice?
No, that was absolutely a waste.
But how long were you there? Just 1 year then?
1 year.
Okay, then what happened after you came back, I guess, after 1 year?
Well, then I was too young to start an apprenticeship. I think you had to be 16. So Dad asked me, well, what do you want? Do you want to keep going to school? Or I said no. So he had a good friend in Zug in Landis+Gyr. It's a big outfit. So he got me a job there in the chemical lab, just for material control, like anything that they bought in for their supplies, for their use, had to be checked with us that it was okay. And the boss there, he was nice, but he said, well, why don't I go and start an apprenticeship as a chemist? I said, no, that was completely out of my field. So I stayed there for a year, and then I did apply for an apprenticeship there with Landis+Gyr as a mechanic, and you had to go for a test, and I never was called up for that test, and I know they had tests, so I figured, well, they probably had so many that there's going to be another one, but nothing happened. And then Dad's friend there, he was the, I don't know, director or whatever over that area. He said, well, have you gone for that test? I said, no. He said, Kopfverdeckel. It's next week, the apprenticeship is going to start. I said, well, I explained it to him. I said, I never got a call. So he kind of said, well, he's going to give him hell there at a meeting, and he's going to get me in anyway. But that in the meantime, my parents sent me to a expert, what do you call that?
An aptitude test?
Hmm?
An aptitude test?
Well,
like career counseling?
Yeah, just career counseling, but that guy was useless. That was another waste. But anyway, because I ran out of time, well, then I decided, okay, I'm going to take that up.
What's that?
Gardening.
Right. Okay. And
But, I don't know why, because they told me, you used to like work in a garden. Well, I don't. I mean, as kids, sure, we had our own little garden, but we never. I don't think we ever enjoyed it really too much to say to go and weed the paths that were full of weeds, things like that. Anyway, that's the way it.
so you started a gardening apprenticeship?
Yeah.
Can you tell us more about that?
Well, I was just used to do what I was told, and as a fact, I think probably about a month after I started, I wanted to quit. As a fact, I walked out of him. I told the boss, well, I didn't tell him to go to hell, but we were packing chrysanthemums, tall chrysanthemums. It's a single flowers that each had be packed separately. And I guess somehow I didn't do it the way he liked, and he gave me hell. And I said, well, what the heck, I'm here to learn. And I got mad, and he got mad, and so I said, well, what the heck, I'm going. So I went home. When I got home, Dad already waited there and said, well, you're going back. So we didn't have much freedom there. Mom couldn't, well, this new mother couldn't do much about that.
So where was the apprenticeship, Dad? Who did you work for?
Emmen, it's not too far from Wood Carver.
Do you recall the name of the place?
Gee, I don't know. Rosenau, maybe.
And they were a gardening center. They grew plants. What did they do? They were a garden center, a nursery?
We had mixed. We did some landscaping, some landscaping, everything you do by hand and with a wheelbarrow. Or we did a lot of growing in greenhouses or vegetables in the field. But this place was owned by a guy that didn't really know much about it, and he let the whole place go to terrible weeds, like with thistles that grow. If you leave a little bit in the ground, they grow again, and that was terrible. But you couldn't plow. You couldn't bring in a machine to plow the place. We had to do it all by hand and pick out every little root that we could see. And that went on for practically the whole 3 years apprenticeship. Got a little bit better towards the end, I guess it was he knew, like my boss there. He was also a teacher at the school in Lucerne. When we had in the winter time, I think we had 2 days of school. Anyway, no, it wasn't the best place. And we have to work hard. You couldn't stand around. I mean, I still remember one time I was walking across the place, and from the other side, another apprentice, I guess, came, and we just stopped for a few seconds to talk. And the boss, he called it over there, if you want to talk now, then you can work after supper. He didn't have any patience.
And would you live with them?
Oh, yeah.
So you got room and board, you got a small wage?
Yeah, but I didn't have a wage at all at the beginning. It's the fact my dad had to pay, I think, 200 or 300 francs to get me in there. And well, eventually, maybe after a year, well, sometimes he gave me a 20 francs or whatever. So, and in the last year, I'm not sure if I got very seldom, maybe 100 francs. But and the lodging was terrible. It was well, they lived downstairs, and we lived. The other apprentice and I lived upstairs in one room, and it wasn't heated really. In the winter time, sometimes your sheets from reading were frozen. It was so cold, and we had to go out downstairs and outside to go to the toilet. So it was very, very primitive.
What, in an outhouse or?
Well, it was in a shed, I guess, but just no toilet with no flushing toilet.
Really?
And then of course that all that left from the toilet that all went into a big tank underneath, and every so often that had to be sprayed out in the garden.
Okay. Nice. And I guess you got to do that. So 3 years like that, school in winter, a couple of days, and the rest of the time working.
Slaving
for this guy.
We had long hours. I forget what.
And probably weekends as well.
At the beginning, we had, I'm not sure if we started at 6 a.m, breakfast, and then worked until probably 6 or 7 in the evening. And then sometimes there was some extra work there that had to be done later on, like we had to make leads for All Saint Day or whatever, or for Christmas. We had to make decorations and and we worked 6 days a week, and Sunday somebody had to be there to look after the greenhouses, to open or shade the plants. And, well, usually it took turns, but quite often, and that was the day when we had to put all that manure on plants on Sunday, the poor guy. And then we got a new foreman. That was probably in the last year. New foreman, he said, "No way, we're not going to do that anymore. We're going to do everything possible the day before, so we don't have to do all that extra work on Sunday." Oh, there were no laws or whatever, how much they could. I mean, there were good outfits, but this wasn't one of them.
So you finished your apprenticeship there, and you got your papers, your certificate, and then what? Did you stay there?
No, I got a job in Burgdorf, near Bern, in a cemetery, looked after graves and maintenance. We had, I don't know, I guess probably about half a dozen people working there. It was kind of nice. They were good company. That was a good job. And then when I thought...
You were working in the cemetery?
Well, yeah, I don't know how, for some reason I had time. I'm not sure if they weren't busy, that they let me go for for a month, or I don't know. Anyway, then I got a job in not too far from Lucerne with a garden outfit, and he wanted to keep me. He didn't want me to go to Canada. I was going to be his foreman, and I mean, that was ridiculous. Huh? Anyway, there's no way that I would have stayed there. And then I decided, I don't know, I still don't know why, what made me decide to go to Canada. But anyway, that's what happened. I wanted to go the year before, actually. And then Dad said, no, I won't give you permission there until you become of age with 20. So, and it's too bad I had an address from an English teacher in Lucerne that I went for a short time, and her friend had a son out west near Edmonton, and she gave me his address, and I wrote to him, and he would have signed for me, because at that time he needed somebody to sign, and all they had to commit themselves is to promise that they had a job for $45 a month plus board and room, I guess. Anyway, unfortunately, that didn't work out that year. But the year later, I think his mother died. That this guy from out west in Davos, and he came over to settle the things, and I could have gone with him then, but the time didn't work out. But then he still no, I met him in Lucerne one time, and he said, well, he came to do the paperwork here in Switzerland, but he can give me an address in Edmonton from a gardener, and he's quite willing to sign for me. So that's what I did, and so I came over and went to this guy in Edmonton, but he didn't really need me. So
so let's step back then. So this is basically you'd made the decision to go to Canada. You had a contact to go to in Edmonton. So tell us, do you remember the date that you left Switzerland? And I know you took the boat over from Le Havre, I think. So tell us a little bit more about that.
It was around, I'm not exactly sure, but I think it was around the 20th of May when I left.
Which year?
49.
1949.
Yeah, and I was quite surprised. I figured, well, I mean, I wasn't used to be away from home when I had to go to that camp in a test scene. I think I cried. Well, Tante Martha probably and Mother, they drove me, or they came to me with the train to Lucerne. That's where I had to join the others that went, and I think I was probably crying for there at least up until St. Gotthard there, because I just wasn't used to go away.
But you were young then as well.
Yeah, but so it didn't bother me at all when we drove to Uncle Werner drove us to Zurich, to the airport, and to the train station. And it didn't bother me at all that to say goodbye. I was, I guess, excited.
Did you travel with anyone?
No.
were people like Hoogie, had some of your friends already gone over?
No, they came later.
They came later.
I was responsible for them coming over here.
So you then took the train to Paris?
To Paris, there I had to go to. Well, I think I had about 2 or 3 days in Paris, and then I had to go to the office there from the Cunard line, I guess, the boat, the shipping, and then from there I had to take the train to Le Havre, to New York.
Tell us about the boat trip. Your accommodations, your whole impression.
Well,
how long it took?
That was actually better accommodation than what I needed. But we went to a travel agency in Lucerne. My dad, he came along, and they just booked me for cabin class, which is better than a tourist class. But of course, we didn't know that, and Dad didn't know, and he paid the bill. I still don't know how that worked.
So what was the boat like?
Oh, it was an excellent boat. Well, I had to share a cabin with another guy, but we had our own bathroom there, and we had excellent meals. We had even had a swimming pool on board. But you weren't allowed to go into any other sections, like for first class, or you had to stay. But somehow, I'm not sure if I went on my own, and then they sent me back again. And then I met people eventually, some from first class, and they said, "Oh, it's all right, you just come with us." And so I went all over. And like I said, everything was. The only thing I was disappointed, we never had a real storm. I figured, well, it'd be exciting. The only thing I can remember, I think the second day, my bones, everything, these muscles were sore as hell. So I don't know, maybe that's from walking around in Paris for a while. But everybody thought I was seasick, but I wasn't. And then in bed, we had the time, I guess it was a bit wavy out there, and you could feel like they were light, and then they were heavy, and always up and down like that, which was more kind of a nuisance than anything else. And
Good.
that went for, 5 or 6 days, I guess, until we seen New York.
So how would you feel when the day you're arriving in New York? You remember? Was it excitement or fear?
Not fear, but I was kind of sorry to leave the boat, because there everything was looked after. And in New York, well, they told you before, you have to be careful. There are people, they just wait for immigrants, and they talk you into something, and they steal your stuff or whatever. And make sure when you take a taxi that they're uniformed and that they look legitimate. So when I got off at New York, I guess it probably went alphabetical, and so I was one of the later ones getting off, and I just couldn't see a taxi around, and then the guy came and asked me. I couldn't talk much English, but the taxi, I guess I could understand. So and he didn't have a uniform, but what the heck, I had no choice. I had to go to the Central train station. So he said, oh yeah, I'll drive up here, that car here. So I went with him, and of course all the way to the central station I figured, gee, I wonder if we get there or if they, but what the heck, I mean, I had nothing really to, but that's from what they told you, you have to be careful. So we got to the train station, and then there were two guys actually, a driver and another guy, and then one of them asked to see my ticket, and then he tried to explain to me that I had to go to the wicket to, I forget what. Well, I had a trunk that didn't travel with me, that was sent directly, but that had to be transferred or arranged from the ship to the train. And I didn't know that, and anyway, he tried to explain that. So anyway, he went with my ticket, and then the other guy asked me if I wanted to come and see where all those trains come in. It's huge, I forget how many, 60 or 70 tracks there. And I said, okay, but I took my suitcase with me to walk over there. He said, oh no, you can leave that. I said, no. So when we came back, well, the other guy wasn't back yet, and then after a while, well, he came, and then I just seen.
Okay, Dad. And we're back. I think where we left off was you had arrived by boat in New York, took the train to Niagara Falls, and did a bit of some sightseeing there, and then took the train from Toronto. Do you want to take it from there?
Well, everything was booked in Switzerland, actually, the times and what train and so on. So I just had to be, I think I had about 5 hours time in Toronto, not enough to do anything really. So I just walked around Front Street and whatever you call it, down by the lake. They couldn't even see the lake at that time when he went down because there was all industrial buildings there. Anyway, I got on the train, and
I think you mentioned it was a steam train.
well, I found that out while we were going there. There was a locomotive. The trains were pulled by steam locomotives, and on the way out to Edmonton, of course, they had to stop quite a few times to fill up with water again and with firewood or coal or whatever they used. Firewood in some places.
Ah, wow. And no stops until Edmonton, where you got off?
I'm not sure if we switched trains in Winnipeg, but it was the same idea really. But maybe there was a different crew on it. I don't know.
And any first impressions as you were going through the Canadian landscape?
Well, of course, whether it was nice or not, it was all interesting. What was outstanding, of course, was driving through Sudbury. That hardly any trees there, and it looked like a moonscape. But I didn't know what Sudbury was at the time. And then you found a lot of wild country, like just bush and lakes, or without not too much populated there on the way out, except when you get too close to cities or towns.
So tell us what happened then when you arrived in Edmonton.
Well, I arrived in West Edmonton, got out and got a taxi. And as far as I know, I think he talked a little bit German. So anyway, we had to go to the other side, to the east side of Edmonton, and I realised then that Edmonton was quite a good size. And on the way out there, he had to go and ask a couple of times to find the place. And when we got there, there was nobody home. But
and that was Entwistle, Alberta.
No, that was in Edmonton.
Oh, that was Edmonton. Okay.
No, I was supposed to go to Entwistle according to the paper, but I mean that's nobody needed me out there. So I got to this Lochlinger. So I was there. I didn't know what. I was standing in the place there with suitcase beside me, I guess, and looking around. I think then finally a woman from next door came, but of course I couldn't talk enough English there. But anyway, eventually they arrived. They were on the market that day, so they came back. So I told them that, well, I had to go to Entwistle. He said, oh no, forget it. He talked to him and he said he doesn't need it. He just figures I had a better chance to get a job in Edmonton. So, but I had no work clothes because those clothes were in my trunk that went to Entwistle. So I don't know. I mean, I felt kind of bad when he went to work in his market garden and I couldn't do anything. Then I said, well, if he had any work clothes or something, then at least I could help him. So, well, then eventually he came up with something. And a little bit later, Mr. Neumann from Entwistle came and brought the trunk. It was quite nice there, and he said, well, come and see us sometimes, visit us. So anyway, then with Blochlinger, he was very helpful. I think a lot of Swiss were directed to his place if they needed any help. Because he was pretty well. Well, he was there for 40 years already. So somebody told him, well, why don't you try the university? Maybe they might need somebody. So we went there and had an interview with the manager there of the grounds. And he was quite interested, but he said, well, I have to check the budget, see if the budget will allow an extra help. He said, give me a call the next day, so which we did, and he said, yes, it's okay, you can come, start. But for now, I can just guarantee a job until the end of the year, and then I have to check the budget again. So anyway, I started working there, and was a good place in a way. Everybody was nice, and I had my boarded room at the university because university had holidays. So. And but then eventually, well, I figured, gee, I don't like that idea that maybe I only have a job until the end of December in the winter time. And I mean, I wasn't used to be unemployed. So I wrote to Joe Link, who I met along the way. So, and he worked on a farm near Calgary at the time. So I wrote to him and see if they could use an extra help there. So he wrote back, "Oh, just come on down. He's quitting too because he doesn't like the job there, so he wants to go either to see for a job in a coal mine or in the woods, in the bush. So I went there, and by that time, after 3 months in Edmonton, my English was getting to be pretty. I could really make a good conversation with anybody to get the meaning of whatever it was all about. So anyway, we went to one of the coal miners' office in Calgary, and they were so nice. They gave us a letter of reference to take to Drumheller. So then we went to Drumheller and we got a job there. And that was through the winter time. It was quite interesting. Of course, a mine. I was maybe not really scared at that age, but certainly something new.
So you left off, I think you were going with Joe Link to Drumheller?
Yeah. So that was quite an experience. Because I had no idea what a mine. I heard stories that mines are dangerous, but Joe Link, he worked in mines in Belgium and he worked in tunnels in Switzerland. He was a cheesemaker by trade, but anyway, it's all I had to do was just simple jobs at the beginning. I could shovel some coal onto a chute. I forget what they call it, a dock bill. It was a new machine that they had that would shake the coal from the face out to the main tunnel where they would load into cars. And another thing you had to do sometimes check. Sometimes there were pieces of stone mixed in with it. You had to try to get rid of that. And then eventually, I had to start drilling holes. Well, what they did with, that's too bad. It really would be better if I'd have photographs, but you weren't allowed to take photographs in the mines. But they had a machine, just like a big chainsaw with an arm, I guess, about 6 or 7 or 8 feet long with teeth. So they would cut along the floor about maybe 5-6 inches thick. Cut so the coal seam was running horizontal, and there was maybe anywhere around 4 feet, sometimes less, sometimes a little more. So the idea was to cut underneath that coal 6 or 8 feet far in. And then I had to drill some holes. Probably, I don't know what was, maybe the whole width was maybe 30-40 feet wide in front. So I had to cut maybe 3 or 4 holes across, angled right up, supposed to hit the ceiling just at the end of that 8 feet. And then the boss, or whatever we call them, he loaded up, put some powder in there, and just it didn't take much to blast it, and then it would just loosen up from the ceiling. Then that's where that duckbill started to come in, and you could swerve that from left to right the whole width. And then another job I had to do in between. We had to, of course, that when you think you take out that coal for, I would say at least 40 feet wide. I mean, you had to do something to keep it from caving in. Huh? So we used timber for that. And that was my job then for a while. And that was probably the last job I had there.
And what any safety features? You wore helmets, I suppose. You wore helmets, but
oh yeah, sure.
Goggles, ear protection.
No goggles, no. Well, there was no need for ear protection. There was nothing really noisy. Yeah.
The blasting. Where would you go when the blasting happened?
Go out outside. I mean, at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
Where the trains are.
Yeah.
Oh no, and that wasn't a big shot. That was
just a small blast. Okay.
But then.
So there, we were just finishing up with your time at Drumheller, and were you working with Joe Link side by side, or was he doing different things?
No, as a fact, for a while there, I was making more money than he did. I mean, that's the way it happens to work. Huh? Well, more was peanuts anyway. So. But they had to cut the. Well, did we talk about the 3 days?
No.
Well, they announced that from starting next week that we would only work 3 days a week because the coal itself, it's a soft coal and it wouldn't keep it as soon as it got into the air. Eventually it would break up, crack, and the reason for why they couldn't sell it anymore is because the trains switched from steam locomotives to diesel. So of course all summer, instead of, like, they lost a customer who bought a lot of coal through the summertime.
So they were cutting back as technology changed.
So we said, well, that's not enough 3 days a week. So Joe and I went up to Edmonton to look for a job. He had an address there from somebody he met on a trip over, I think. And we went there, and so that's when we got a job to go up to Great Bear Lake.
And just before we continue there, Dad, I think you said Otto Fandrich joined you in, was it Drumheller?
It was in Drumheller, but it was almost at the end then.
Right.
So, and when Joe and I went up to Edmonton, Otto Fandrich was working in the coal mine at another shift. So we went, just Joe and I went, but we got the job for him as well to go up to Great Bear Lake after.
So all three of you went there?
Yeah.
Okay. So tell us about that.
Well, you had to sign a contract there for 300 shifts. That's a year's work to get the free trip paid up there. They had their own airplanes. But, or if you worked half of that, well, then they paid you half the trip. And if less, then you paid the whole trip. So, when it was ready, when we had time to, or we supposed to fly up, they could only take two of us. Because I guess they had freight and other things to take up, and I guess they had their limits how much they could put on. So because I talked most English of them, they said, well, you can stay here in Edmonton for another day. And so that's what happened.
And what was the name of the company?
Eldorado Mining and Refining.
So you guys arrived in Port Radium.
Yeah, when we arrived there, up there, the lake was still frozen. We landed on the ice, which again was something new for me. Yeah.
And this was, I think you said you were in Drumheller from September 1949 to April 1950. So this would have been spring of 1950 that you went to Port Radium?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was probably more closer to the end of April, because I remember we got up there in May, and we arrived up there, and it was amazing. It was midnight, it was daylight, just like, so that was another interesting impression. And a little bit later, if we, like, people took pictures straight north, we could see the sun coming down, and before it went under the horizon, it started to go up again.
Yeah.
Anyway, so there again, I had to. It was different. The mining was different. The ore body was more vertical than, mostly vertical, not horizontal. And my first job was laying rail tracks for the cars.
Yeah.
I had to help a guy, and eventually, well, I'm not sure if the other guy quit or whatever. Anyway, I had to do that.
We were in Port Radium, and you were describing I guess your work there and life there. Can you tell us more about, like, where you lived in barracks there on the site?
Oh, I forgot what they called that. They were just buildings with single rooms in it. So we had Otto Fender and I had a room, and then for meals we had to go down to the I forget what they called it anyway, down near the lake.
Cafeteria of some kind?
Mm. The same for going underground. Well, we could get our sandwiches down there too. And, well, it was well supplied. I mean, the food was good, and except the bread was bread was just, well, that was the normal at the time, just white bread that didn't have much of a crust. Some people even cut the crust off because it was too hard for them. But no, all in all, that the food was okay.
And for entertainment, how long were the shifts, and what would you do in your off hours?
Well, the shifts were 8 hours of it. And of course, you stayed underground for lunch. You had, on every level, we had a lunch room. I forget. I think we had probably about 12 different levels. The whole mine, I forget now, was, I don't know, was at least, it was over 1,000 feet deep. And then from there, from the main shaft, well, there was just tunnels going in all directions wherever the ore was. Well, that was a uranium mine. Huh?
Exactly. What was your job there, Dad?
Well, like I say, I had to put in tracks for the cars. At that time, not only that time, for many years, that's the way for transportation. They had a track system, and they had little trains with little cars and electric locomotives. Then they would pull it to the main shaft. There the cars would go up on an elevator, one car at a time. And up there on top it was dumped to go to the refinery.
Well, that's interesting, because I remember you saying in Drumheller they used horses to haul the coal, like in the mines.
Well, up there, I guess it wouldn't have been practical to have horses up there.
Right.
No, they had electric. Well, they were battery powered. They were just put on charge overnight, I guess.
And didn't you say once the mine was actually under the lake?
Well, it was, most of it was, well, practically all of it was under the lake.
Under the lake up there, which is Great Bear Lake, right?
Yeah. And before they went ahead with a new tunnel, they had to sometimes drill 100 feet or more. And if they hit water, well, then, because he couldn't tunnel that way.
Right.
Or sometimes what they did, they pumped cement in it to block it up.
Right.
I don't know, water was concerned, of course. I mean, if there was a breakthrough, I mean, that would have been deadly.
Yeah. And just getting back to some recreational stuff, wasn't that where you got into photography quite a bit? I remember you talking about fishing trips as well. And a trip to was it Inuvik? Was that all during your time at Port Radium?
The copper mine.
Copper mine, yeah.
Well, that was a one-time thing, of course. I mean, we had in the winter we had 2 curling rinks, and we had bowling alleys. Then we had a cafeteria where you could listen to music or buy almost anything, chocolates, cigarettes, not alcohol. We had to we were out 1 liter of alcohol a month from Yellowknife. You had to fly it in.
So
liter of alcohol, or I forget, I think a bottle of wine or a case of beer. And I wasn't a drinker anyway, and somebody came after a few months and said, "Hey, why don't you get your alcohol in? You can sell it for." Everybody is crazy about buying it from me for a good price. Huh? So that's what I did then. I always had the same guy. He paid for a bottle that I probably paid about $7. He paid gladly $20 for a bottle of whiskey. Huh?
Great. So there you did you do your 300 shifts before you had a break?
Yeah. Then Joe Link, he quit. He didn't stay up there very long. He figured, well, they didn't really give him a full chance because, well, maybe he's English or I don't know. But he was good though. And Otto Fender and I stayed. So 6 months, and then we decided we're going to go on a trip. So we went down to Edmonton, and then over to Vancouver, and down to San Francisco and Los Angeles, all by bus at that time. And then later on we came, well, I forget now how long, maybe a few weeks on that trip, and then we came back to Edmonton, and we figured, well, let's see what we can get as gardeners. So we went and looked around for a job as a gardener, but boy, they paid the least. So we said, well, there's no way. So we signed for another contract for another year.
In Port Radium?
Yeah. I had a girlfriend at the time, so over there, so I guess that was probably the reason.
So can you just go back, Dad? I think we got cut off there. You went to Switzerland with Otto Fandrick, you planned a vacation, and then shortly after you got there, Otto Fandrick told you he wasn't going back to Canada. Do you want to just repeat that?
Well, we had planned that for the 6 months, we would do a lot of traveling over there, maybe even buy a cheap car or whatever. But all that, of course, went to nothing when he phoned that he wasn't coming back. So I stayed for 6 months and then I went back. And so what did I do then? Oh, that's when I left. When I left for Switzerland at the time, I had my Studebaker. So we drove that Studebaker from Edmonton down to Sudbury.
With Otto Fandrick, yeah.
With Otto Fandrick and a couple of German guys. And then Joe Link, he worked in Sudbury in a mine, and he ran a little restaurant there. So I asked him if he wanted to use my car while we were gone, and of course that was nice for him. So anyway, we went then. And then when I came back in April or whatever the following year, I was supposed to meet him in Montreal. He was supposed to come down Montreal, I think. He was supposed to come down and pick me up then with the car. And he had I believe a cousin in Montreal that was to go to her place. So anyway, when I got there, I found out that Joe had an accident with the car just outside of Ottawa. On a bright morning there, he got over a hill and the sun was full in his face, and he ran into another car. So we had to leave the car there in Ottawa to have it repaired. So
I remember you telling me how it was pretty easy to get a license at the time. Like there were no driver's tests or anything like that.
No, yeah, that's right. I bought a car in Edmonton, and for the license, all you had to do was go to the office, whatever, town hall. I think it cost me $2 for a driver license. Well, at that.
Okay, so we are back. Let me just get this image right. We're back. There's been a break of, I guess, a couple months, maybe, since we last recorded. We're now in, what is it, Dad, October 10 of 2016. And I think where we left it off last, you had gone to Switzerland for 6 months, I think with Otto Fandrick. When Otto Fandrick...
That was in 52, I think. Huh?
Okay. And I guess originally Otto Fandrick told you he wasn't coming back to Canada. He stayed in Steinhausen with... Oh, no, you stayed in Steinhausen with Hans and Lena. Hans was now running the business. And, yeah, and then you were coming back to Canada. Joe Link was supposed to meet you in Montreal, and he had an accident with his car outside of Ottawa. And then he came to meet you in Montreal by train, right?
Yeah.
So let's take it from there. I think you went back to Sudbury and worked with a contractor, McIsaac. You want to take it from there, and then about how you met Mom, all those things. So you went back to Sudbury with Joe Link?
Yeah.
So tell us more.
Well, I guess he had a job with McIsaac then. And so at that time he had no problem to get a job in a mine, so especially if somebody recommended you.
So what did that job, it involved, I think, laying track?
That was well, that's what I had experience from Great Bear Lake. They put me on track laying up there.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And I think in your notes, you said in 1954, Hugi Steiner came to join you?
Yeah, about that, yeah.
And that was in Sudbury?
I'm not sure if he was in Montreal first. Anyway, he came to Sudbury after and he got a job with McIsaac too.
Right. And were you guys living together?
Yeah.
Where was that?
In Falconbridge in what do you call that?
Like a boarding house?
Boarding house. Yeah.
Boarding house, okay. Where you had a room and you were served breakfast in the morning, that kind of thing? You were served meals?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, and then we get into the, I guess, chapter where I guess Hugi Steiner suggested you guys put an ad in a Swiss paper.
Mm-hmm.
So why don't you take us through that?
Well, he said, well, let's put an ad in a paper over there. And the C and there was known for that. And he said, I know of a friend that did that, and he got so many answers that he pasted his room with photographs from that. So anyway, we said, well, sure, just for fun. But then Hugi, I think he broke his arm, and during the recovery, he went to Montreal, and so I needed somebody else. So there was a guy, a Swiss chemist there, so he joined, and but that one didn't last. Helen's friend wasn't interested in him, and Helen always said, or do a root von Almond. She always told Helen, come on, stop. Stop writing to him before you know you're gonna go over there. Huh?
Yeah. So what did your ad say? Do you remember? What did your ad say?
Well, I don't know what that was. What did it say? 2 Swiss guys or whatever. Anyway, and age, I guess, 25 around, and one Protestant and one Catholic, which actually fitted that because Ruth phonology was Protestant. But I mean, nothing ever was said about future marriage or anything like that at that time. And Helen, when she wrote back there or later on, she said, well, it was just exciting to get mail from Canada all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So
how did you pick Mom's photo from among, you said you got about 40 responses?
Yeah, 40 or 60, I think. But I must say we answered all of them, whether we kept them or not, and sent the photo back. Well, Helen was the best looking one.
No doubt. all men are this.
That picture there, over there, the little one, that's the one that she sent.
Let me get that. Here, why don't you hold it up for the camera?
That's right.
No, up by your face. Hold it up by your face. Yeah, And then why don't you move it forward? Yeah, there's your sweetheart. Great, so that's the photo that you got. And then you responded to her.
Well, I responded to her, and she was interested in getting mail from Canada.
So how often did you correspond? And how long did that go on before you kind of moved to the next stage?
Oh, I don't know exactly, but
Well, I think in your notes, in 1954 is when you sent the when you put the ad in the paper, and then I think you said in 1955 you flew to Switzerland.
yeah, but in the meantime, I was offering her to pay her a trip to come over here to.
Yeah.
And then she said, well, no, she can't take time off already again. And so then eventually I said, okay, then I'm coming over.
Yeah. And before that, she'd already been introduced to your family, right?
Well, I mean, we got pretty close actually, and then I suggested that she go and see Oliver's, the family, which was quite a success.
Yeah. Tell me, I remember you saying, what did Eloise tell you?
Well, everything good about her, and she said, and among other things, said, oof, oof, and she has sex appeal.
Good. I think he said she's a keeper, right?
Could be, I don't know.
That's good. So in 1955, you flew to Switzerland for 3 months.
Yeah.
So tell us, where'd you fly to, and I guess your first meeting with Mom?
Well, at that time you could get extra bonus stops. So I flew to Paris, not Sudbury, I flew to London. I was there for 2 or 3 days. And then to Paris, and Ruth von Almen, she was there. So I was there for a couple of days, I guess. And then I flew to Geneva.
Yeah. So where did you meet? Where did you first meet Mom?
At the airport.
She was waiting for you at the airport?
Yeah.
Wow. Was that awkward at first?
No.
No?
Oh, no. No, we had a hotel room there somewhere. And, well, I told her that we would fly back to Zurich from there, huh? Which we did after about 3 days. So everything was going fine. And what we found out after that we met on the 5th day of the 5th month in 55. But it wasn't planned like that, huh? But it just happened to be.
Mm-hmm.
So we never forgot that. Yeah, and then, I mean, she was working, and of course she took a couple of weeks holidays, I think. So, and we went to Italy.
Where were you there?
Hmm?
Where were you in Italy?
In Alassio. It's somewhere in the, I don't know, it's somewhere in the area of the Cinque Terre there. I think she knew the place, so she's been there before.
Yeah. And a wonderful 2 weeks.
I'm not sure if it was 2 weeks or 1 week, but oh yeah, definitely it was nice. But my dad said after, that wasn't, you shouldn't have done that before you were at least engaged to go on a holiday like that. And of course I guess he figured, well, it wasn't proper. Well, there was nothing improper. It's
just appearances. So you were there 3 months, so that was quite a while. What did you do during those 3 months? So Mom was back to work. She had couple of weeks off, and then you were. What were you doing during that time? Do you remember?
Oh, well, I mean, I probably did some visiting relatives
And you introduced Mom to the family, of course.
Yeah.
And what was the reception?
Well, it was all okay, yeah. I remember Tante Johanna, she said, boy, you picked the best one. Anyway, that's, so that was one of the visits that we did. Then in between, well, I don't know, it's...
Good. And then you got engaged. Tell us about that.
Well, since I didn't really want to burden anybody with making a celebration out of it, we decided to do it as a secret. We went to bed and we sent cards then to the relatives, so I guess they knew when we came back, and they were mostly disappointed that we didn't make a big thing out of it. But for us it was, like I say, I think it was the right thing to do. I mean, I didn't want to do anything maybe what I should have done is go out with all the relatives for some dinner somewhere. But well, I found I didn't have any money to spare, and we didn't find anything wrong with it. We enjoyed the engagement up in Bern.
Good. And so, was that shortly before you went back to Canada?
See, I don't know the date.
Yeah, so you don't remember the dates anymore?
No.
So you flew back to Canada?
Well, I'm sure it was towards the end, because, I mean, the reason I was there for 3 months is to get to know each other better. Then I flew back to Canada.
And had you made a decision then about Mom coming over? When?
No, not the date, but no, I mean, everything was fine, and it just kept on riding, and then eventually, well, like I say, I offered to go to, well, no, I'm sorry. She came over like a year later then, yeah.
So she quit her job. You were then, where were you at that time? Was it Sault Ste. Marie?
Yeah, I think so. Well, west of Sudbury.
Watchawana Bay?
Yeah.
Yeah, with Hoogie Steiner. Okay. So Mom came over in 1956. I think it was midsummer. And where were you living then? What were the arrangements? And what was Mom's first reaction to Canada?
Well, I don't know. I guess it must have been quite a shock there, especially. I think we moved back to Sudbury after.
Did you pick her up in Montreal?
Yeah.
So she flew to Montreal. You had a car. You picked her up. Okay.
She came over by boat, didn't she? Yeah.
So tell us more about where you lived.
Well, yeah, we lived in I guess I worked in Sudbury then. And I was Boogie too. We lived with Swigards, a Swiss family. And at the beginning, well, Helen and I had a room together there with them. And then we had to look for something for ourselves. And since we knew that we didn't want to stay in Sudbury eventually in the long run, we really looked for something that's furnished, so we wouldn't have to buy furniture and then move it all later on. So, so we had a pretty primitive first room or apartment. And I must say I admire Mom for pulling all through that time. I mean, compared to what she had in Switzerland, she gave up a lot. And then I don't know why. I mean, just because she loved me, or I don't know. Anyway, we were there for not that long a time, really, in that place. And then we moved. Then Helen was pregnant with Greg. And we had a nice apartment there.
Well, you forgot. Well, we haven't talked about your wedding. You got married September 29, 1956. So yeah. Tell us more about that. That was in Sudbury, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Can you tell us about when you decided to get married and tell us about your wedding?
Well, I mean, Helen didn't see you could get a visa that you were going to get married within a certain time, but she didn't have that condition, so we had time. But anyway, we decided, well, we should get married and started to look around. Well, we had a small wedding in a restaurant on a little lake. And I think we were probably, I don't know, I would say maybe around 20 people, all mostly Swiss, I guess. We had a good time there. We were telling jokes, we were singing. And at that time, well, the liquor board, well, not every restaurant had a liquor license then, So what you could do is, if you had a wedding at place without the liquor license, then you could go and buy your own wine or whatever in the liquor store and bring it. So that's what we had.
So who were some of the people there? I guess Hoogie, Joe, and were they married? They weren't married at that. No.
No, I was the first one of them. But Hoogie, Joe, well, Mikko Shorty, Fediger. There were some Canadians from the boarding house, like from Swigards. And Swigards, of course, they were there. And Joe and Hoogie, they worked down in, I'm not sure it was Elliot Lake, but at that time they both came. And boy, did they were generous buying presents, which made it hard for us when they got married later on. We couldn't afford to give big presents. I mean, we were living pretty well, as cheap as possible.
Yeah. So what did they get you?
Oh, I don't know. Hoogie, for instance, bought a total set of not cutlery, like dishes and bowls and cups. And I forget what else, but they were all good presents. And Joe, I forget what he, well, they bought, they were very, very generous.
They're good guys. And then you had your honeymoon.
Well, I worked in Falconbridge at that time, and not very long yet, because since I moved from Sudbury, I guess. So all I could get is 3 days without pay. So anyway, well, so we, on our honeymoon, we went to North Bay and then down to Algonquin Park. It was a beautiful time. All trees were all colourful.
Mom must have loved it.
Yeah, that was beautiful. The weather was great, and I think I had a tape recorder along with music on it, and so we played that in the hotel room.
And didn't Mom throw her wedding bouquet in the Canoe Lake?
Yeah, in Algonquin Park. Well, the bouquet was getting towards the end anyway, but anyway, she threw it into the water there, and I think I still have a picture of it.
Nice. And then it was really back to normal life, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Honeymoon was over. You were back at work at Falconbridge, and then I guess you decided to have children pretty quickly.
Well, I guess both of us. I mean, it's never guaranteed that you're going to have children, and not everybody can get children, so it's kind of exciting.
Do you remember where Greg was conceived? It must have been right before Christmas.
Oh, I don't know. Well, you can figure back from September 21st, 9 months.
Yeah. Oh, I guess, sorry, that would have been January, not December. Great. So tell us more, if you can, about your daily life. I think, didn't Mom get a job herself?
She didn't. She wasn't the type that wanted to sit around, and so she went looking for a job. So she got a not a big paying job, but she mostly typewriting. She was very good at that, and so she had that for a while, and then say she was pregnant, and eventually, well, she had to quit.
And then Greg was born September 21, 1957.
Yeah.
Tell us about that, where he was born. And
well, he was born in Sudbury. I'm not sure, General Hospital. And I couldn't go and visit her because they had the Asian flu around. And then we got I don't know if both of us got a cold. And for a while there, some Swiss lady, she offered to take the baby and look after him. Well, not long, maybe a week or two, I don't know, but that's all because of the flu. And we were there for a while. But then there was an elderly couple that owned the house downstairs, and we felt kind of, well, they didn't complain, but we felt, well, maybe we should look for something out which they did. And we did every time we moved. I guess it got a little bit better. But
I remember what was life early days like with Greg. I remember seeing photos of you or Mom painting the crib with pictures of Disney characters.
Yeah, well, of course, that's another example how we had to do a lot of things ourselves because we didn't have the money to buy anything expensive. So I made the crib, and I made, well, the painting on it. I guess we did that together. And I have pictures where we went for a walk with a sled in the winter time. It was cold, and Greg all bundled up in fur. But I don't think Helen ever complained about the cold.
So you were, I think it wasn't until 1959 that you moved south to Ancaster, right? So you spent a couple of years
one year.
Up in Sudbury. You kept working in the mines in Sudbury?
Yeah, until 59, and then.
So what made you decide to move and change?
Well, Otto Fendrick, cousin, he came over. Well, he worked with me too in the mines there for a while, but he went back home. And anyways, he was back home, got married, and it started to have children. And then they decided, well, we're gonna come after all over here. So I think first he worked in a tobacco, and then he worked for a landscaper in Hamilton, and then he started his own lawn maintenance business, which, at that time was doing pretty good. And they came and visited us up in Sudbury one time, and he said, well, why don't they come down and they can work for me for a year, for a season, and which we did. And finally we said, well, we're always looking for, we've tried to go back to Switzerland. Nobody advised that they all figured, well, I couldn't get used to Switzerland anymore. So anyway, so I came down here in 59, sorry, 59. I worked for my cousin for the year. We lived in Ancaster then that year. And then he decided, well, our Fenwick said he can give us some customers that he has in East Hamilton or in Burlington, which he really doesn't want anymore. So that would be a start for us, which worked quite well actually. So.
And did you move to Burlington at the same time?
Well, we then had to look for a house. So we went, I don't know how many places we went and looked at in East Hamilton, and then we found this one here on Hillwood Road in Burlington, which looked kind of run down, but was a good price. So we put in an offer and we got it. But it was a lot of work for both of us to get that place in shape.
What did you have to do?
For the first thing we had to do was clean. The whole place was so filthy. It was terrible. Huh? And it used to be a nice house apparently. A guy built it himself in the early 50s and then sold it eventually. So these people had it for 3 years, and they made a mess of it. They used cheap paint to paint the outside over good paint, but inside the rooms were painted in the craziest colours. Some of them red, some of them blue, some of them yellow. And beside that, because it was filthy. The kitchen was so filthy that we couldn't even move anything into there before it was all scrubbed out. And the surroundings, everything was in bad shape. Huh?
What about the yard?
Oh well, God, there wasn't a decent driveway. It was just gravel and mud.
And all the trees that we see here now, there were, if I recall, the yards were pretty open from one to the next.
Oh yeah,
there weren't trees.
Almost every tree on this property that's any size, we planted those over the years now.
And I remember Mom saying that it was quite an adjustment from Sudbury, where you had a lot of friends, a lot of Swiss friends, and that Burlington was very I guess wasn't as welcoming, and much harder to make friends here than it was in Sudbury.
Well, it wasn't a bad street that we moved to actually for that. I mean, the street was fairly short, and they had 70 children on that street.
Mostly Dutch, right?
Most of all from Dutch families. They had some of them had up to 7 children, but that way at least you got to know the parents, and they were okay. Well, except one, Elsie.
Yeah.
Elsie the cow, she was a bitch. Well, they were very friendly at the beginning, over friendly actually, but didn't last very long because I think she was jealous when we started to improve our place. So that lasted quite a few years actually.
The animosity from.
Yeah, and then I mean they weren't that young anymore, and he worked for the Hydro, I believe, and the chance of him getting moved was pretty slim. Huh?
But eventually they did move.
Hmm?
Eventually they did move.
They did, yeah, so he got transferred, I guess. So. And since then we had pretty good neighbours after that.
The Johnsons, the Hobbs, Sutherlands across, the McDonalds, Akumas. Yeah. And so when you moved here, you started your own business. Can you tell us about that? The name of it, your customers, your workers?
Well, we called the business Skyway Landscaping. Skyway Landscaping and Gardening, I guess. I mean, it was primitive work in a way, cutting lawns, but at that time, there weren't very many good gardeners around. I mean, because nobody could do apprenticeships over here. So we put an ad in the paper over there in Switzerland, and we had Swiss gardeners for most of the 60s. And they were young people that were finished with the apprenticeship and wanted to see the world. Some of them just stayed 1 year, some of them, I think the most were about 3 years they stayed. But you could depend on them. And then...
and they usually lived in the house?
Yeah. Yeah, that's another thing. You couldn't do that today anymore. Not with, like we had this man, yes, 3 guys living down in that room. Huh?
Wow. And then I guess Mom helped out with the invoicing.
Yeah, she did all that, and she also went in certain areas from house to hand out cards that told us what business we were in, and so she was very helpful. And that's when, in 1960, that's when you were born.
Yeah.
And Mark in 62.
And then at that time, I guess the family doctor was Dr. Stefani.
Yeah.
If I recall, Burlington, Joseph Brandt there was no hospital in Burlington, I guess, when I was born.
No, they were just starting to build it, I guess, in early 60s.
So I was born in St. Joseph's, right, in Hamilton?
I guess so,
Yeah. And then when Mark came around, he would have been born in Burlington. So what was it like with 3 kids running around?
Oh, it was, I don't know, we were quite happy to have 3 kids.
And then there were some interesting things. I mean, we did a Florida road trip 3 times, was it?
Yeah.
At least on one of those, or maybe 2, we had Trudy was over, or maybe and the one I think, Niefenecker, what's Gottlieb came with us, right? Can you tell us some more about that, and then also, I guess, what your winters were like, because that was the off season for you.
Well, we had a lot about Florida, people going down there in the winter, and we never thought that we would be able, but anyway, we decided to give it a try. So we had well, we bought a new car, a Pontiac station wagon, in probably 62 maybe. And at that time, well, it was fantastic for the children. They could play in the back. They didn't have to put seat belts on. But, well, there again, I mean, we always looked for fairly cheap hotels. And down in Florida, well, we were in Daytona Beach for a week. And then Miami, I think, for another week. And then the other side, another week. That's probably about it, 3 weeks.
And it was the first time, I think Trudy was here when Mark was born, right? To help Mom?
Yeah. So Gottlieb probably came before her, I guess. Yeah, he came along, but he didn't have much money to spare, but so he figured on with $200 for 3 weeks, that would do him. So in one place there he slept out in the car at night. Another time we had a week on the west side, a week, and I don't think we ever told the people that we had an extra guy. So we used to take one mattress from the bed and put it on the floor for Gottlieb. The first year actually was Cubby Egley. I don't know if you remember him. No?
Remember him? No. I think he's the one who named me
Rugoli or
Huguli.
could be. Well, we had him for 3 years. And then eventually he applied for a visa to the States and he moved down to California. So I haven't heard from him anymore.
Well, then Gottlieb must have come right after, right?
Well, I might have had him together with Cubby Egley for a while. I don't remember now, but we had some Swiss gardens almost to the end of the 60s. And then I went to took a real estate course because one of our customers was a real estate realtor, and I asked him one time if he ever had a house that needed some repair work, that I'd be interested, so I could work on it in the winter time. And he said, "Oh, forget it. That's if you do that, then you have to get tradespeople in to finish the work, so we can sell it again." So he said, "Well, why don't you go and get a real estate license?" So I had to take a course for, I don't know, a couple of weeks or whatever. So I worked for Todd Real Estate that winter, sold a couple of houses, and then of course spring came up, and I couldn't live on what I made there. So I wanted to get a good helper from Switzerland as a foreman, so he could run the business while I was continuing in real estate. But then they answered back, "No, you have to give us a chance first to see if we can get you somebody here." So that was early in the winter when I inquired about that. And then in March I phoned them. I said, "Well, did you get somebody?" They said no. So I said, "Well, how are you going to get me somebody now when everybody else is hiring?" So they didn't care it as well, sorry. So I had to quit the real estate and go back into landscaping again.
Wow, I hadn't heard that before. So do you remember when that was? This in the 70s, early 70s?
I would say so, yeah.
Huh.
And I think I probably could have done very well, because things really started to pick up then with people buying houses. And
yeah, Burlington was certainly a big market. So before...
But I was never really a guy to go from door to door and ask or tell them that I'm looking for listings to sell houses. And
so let's go back to I guess when Mark was born and Trudy came over. Tell us more about that.
Was that the first time Trudy came over?
I think so.
Well, I think Trudy was probably about 16 at the time. And Mom, it was a bit much. She could have used some help, so we offered her parents that we would pay Trudy's trip over here, and she could stay with us for a year. And which kind of they liked, because you have to have some experience in housework when you're when you finish with schooling, and that would qualify her for. And she was a big help. Mark was a lively guy.
What else did you do in your winters? I know at one point you started, I guess there are a few things you did. You had the Christmas wreath business, I guess, that Bernhardt introduced you to.
Yeah, that was Bernhard's Steck ID. He was one of the gardeners that we got over here. And over there, when he worked in Basel, for Christmas they always made Christmas decorations, and they sprayed them with wax to make it look like snow. they're quite beautiful. So he said, well, why don't we try that? So, well, we did, and then we had a stand over in Roseland in front of a store, and actually they were selling quite well, and then the business there did kind of complain, so we had to move away again. But we sold quite a few Advent wreaths to 10 inches in Hamilton. But when Bernard was gone, well, we didn't really keep it up anymore. Well, we didn't. I don't think we made much money, or hardly any at all, that way.
Yeah. But you've kept up making those for yourself and for others. They're still amazing. And then at some point you got into sculpture, got back into sculpture, I guess, because you had done some wood carving when you were young. Do you remember when that was?
I seen a picture on a magazine with a little deer on it, and I figured, yeah, it'd be nice to have one like that. And then but I didn't want to buy one. It cost too much. So I got a piece of wood. So that came out quite well.
So hold it up higher, Dad. Hold it up higher.
That was done in December 46.
Do you remember what kind of wood that is?
I think it's pear.
Pear, wow.
This one here, I think I worked in Blind River when I got the urge to fiddle around a little bit more. So I did this on 56 with a pocket knife.
The pocket knife, wow. That's a weasel. Beautiful.
And then, I don't know, I know that in 1972, the whole family drove out west, and I figured, well, I'd like to buy